customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. What if you had access to the secrets world-class companies know that enable them to deliver a consistently great customer experience? The DiJulius Group believes some secrets are better shared. That's why we created a framework that divulges what world-class companies know in a simple, easy-to-follow system. Get access now by enrolling in the Customer Experience Executive Academy. Visit cxea.org or email Claudia@thedijuliusgroup.com for more information.
Hello, revolutionaries. My name is Dave Murray. I'm the Vice President of Consulting for the DiJulius Group, and thank you for joining us today for our continuing webinar series on customer experience, its importance. And today, we are going to dive into service recovery and specifically nevers and always within our service recovery, which is a really, really important topic. One that I see a lot of organizations, unfortunately, don't spend enough time on as far as content creation and then training for their teams. So again, John is not with us today. He's out there traveling. I'm on the road too, but I'm not on a flight yet. I will be shortly. But before I take off, I wanted to cover this with you. So let's dive into service recovery, nevers and always. So for those of you that are familiar with our methodology at the DiJulius Group, service recovery, nevers and always are part of Zero Risk. Zero Risk is a workshop that we conduct with our client base to make sure that they are training their teams on how to handle issues when things go wrong, how to have those difficult conversations, how to effectively deal with a complaint and take that complaint and do so consistently and do so being mindful of the experience that we are delivering. In a nutshell, what we call zero risk, how we define it, is anticipating your service defects. So knowing what can and will go wrong, whether it's a systems issue, human error, all those things that we know can and will go wrong, and then having the protocols in place to make it right. And so this service recovery, never and always, is something that is part of that. It's something that we create so it's a tool in the back pocket of your team members when they do run into these defects, they do run into these problems, so they do know what to do going forward. And it's such an important topic, especially right now. And so since COVID, since the pandemic, there was a study done at the end of 2023 that gave us some data that tells us that customers are less forgiving since going through the pandemic. And if you think about it, that makes sense, right? Coming out of the pandemic, there were so many issues with so many organizations, whether it was supply chain issues or staffing issues. So a lot of organizations suffered from some service defects, some service issues, and it upset customers. So what this statistic tells us is since COVID, customers are telling us that 80% of them will go to a competitor after one bad experience. So what's that? What is that telling us? It's telling us that brand loyalty is eroding and it continues to erode. It always was a little bit, and the pandemic kind of accelerated that. So brand loyalty is eroding. And the other thing of this is telling us that if we're not prepared to handle an issue well, right? If we get a bad experience, if we hear about a bad experience or see a bad experience for one of our customers and we don't act on it, we don't handle it well, they are very likely going to go somewhere else. So it's imperative for organizations to be focused on their service recovery, to make sure their team members know what to do, have the tools in place to handle that well, and then know how to execute that. And again, the service recovery nevers and always is a tool that falls right in there. So let me give you a quick overview of the zero risk concept and why we do it. Here's another statistic, which is a little scary. Bad customer service puts $3.7 trillion in sales annually at risk, right? Organizations are losing customers left and right. Sales are facing issues because of a bad experience. So this information from Qualtrics tells us that. And here's the thing that I really want to make sure that I impress upon you all today in today's session. And it's so important. Complaints are truly a gift, right? If a customer takes the time to come to us and tell us about an issue, whether they email it in, they call it in, they come face to face to one of our team members at a desk or at a countertop, whatever that looks like in your world, it is truly a gift. They are giving us an opportunity to fix it, make it right, and then have them stay with us, right? They are giving us a second chance. A lot of customers these days, based on that 80% statistic that I just shared, a lot of customers aren't doing that. They're not taking the time to even let us know. They're just moving on. So complaints are truly a gift, and especially now more than ever before. But what happens when that complaint comes in? What do your team members do? Are they appreciative? Are they thankful? Are they helping that customer? Or are they in the mindset of, oh, here comes another one, another complaint, another upset customer, and I don't get paid enough for this, or whatever happens in your culture, right? So we need to create some tools on how to handle these well, and then make sure that our team members are trained on these tools and using them consistently. So when we talk about zero risk, we look at a couple of categories that I want to share with you, and then we'll dive into the specific topic today, which are the service recovery nevers and always. But here is what we look at zero risk. First off, how easy are you to work with? How easy are you to do business with? Right? Are you making sure that it's easy to be a customer? So that is definitely one of those things that we look at during this process. Another thing we look at is, where do we drop the ball? Right? A lot of times when a customer is upset, complaining, very often it's our fault. We cause it in some form or fashion. Where do those things happen? And how can we look to minimize those from happening in the future? And if we can't completely eliminate them, at least put some protocols in place so our team members know how to pick up that ball and run with it and make it a better experience, even though we do have an upset customer. Another one is service avoidance, right? Do we sometimes kick the can down the road? We don't want to have that difficult conversation. We put off making that call because we know we're going to upset the customer, which only makes the situation worse with that delay. And then one of the things we're talking about today, those service recovery never and always fit into this bullet point, having world-class recovery protocols, having a system in place where our team members know what to do, they have the behaviors that they follow, how they execute that, what to avoid. And so we'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment. It's also an opportunity for us as an organization to look at our communication. Are we communicating as effectively as we can with our customers? Are we giving them all the information they need? Very often when it comes to service recovery and what we call zero risk, very often when complaints come in, if you track backwards, if you look a week previous, 2 weeks previous, maybe even a year previous to that complaint coming in, there is usually an opportunity where we could have done a better job setting expectations or communicating with that customer to avoid what led to the complaint. And so it's a great opportunity as you're assessing your current service recovery protocols to see, are there areas in our business where we need to be more transparent with our customers? We need to be sharing more information. Sometimes it's as simple as we make assumptions that a customer understands this or knows this, and we don't have to repeat it. So taking a look at your communication with your customers is a great opportunity here. And then also looking at the fact, are we tracking customer challenges well enough? I work with a lot of organizations, and sometimes they do a nice job of getting those complaints in and getting them resolved, but they're not always tracking them. They're not looking for trends. They're not looking to see what the root cause is and try and prevent that from happening in the future, right? They're just focused on the here and now, solving this problem and moving on. It's kind of in that mentality of just putting out fires, but not looking how to prevent those fires in the future. And then here's an important one. How can we avoid saying no when we can't say yes? What does that look like in your world where we're able to give options, right? So we don't stop at no, sorry, can't help you with that. It's against our policy, can't do it, whatever that looks like. Where can we be creative and look for opportunities or options that we can present to that customer? It may not be exactly what they want, but it's at least better than that no. So that's what we're focused on when we talk about zero risk. And again, service recovery nevers and always are part of that zero risk workshop. But here's what happens in most organizations when it comes to complaints or customer issues. I have a list here. Think about your world right now. Are you guilty of any of these? Do your team members sometimes fall back on these? So here's what a typical customer challenge experience looks like. I'm not happy. I had a problem. I'd like to make a complaint. Maybe I'm not even making a complaint. I'm just out of here. Here's what that typically looks like. When I do call in and make that complaint, or go to the desk, make a phone call in, a lot of times I'm given the third degree, right? I'm upset. I feel that I didn't get what I paid for, or the experience didn't match what I should have received as a customer. And very often it's put back on me. Did you do this? Did you do this? Right? We start to blame our customers. So think about that. Does that happen in your world? Another thing that happens very often is this natural tendency that we have as humans to overshare, right? Sometimes when we're dealing with that upset customer, we don't want that customer to think it was our fault personally. So we start throwing every other department under the bus, right? It's the sales team's fault. It's the service team's fault. They always drop the ball. And what we wind up doing is putting our entire organization in a bad light, as opposed to just owning it and fixing the problem. Similarly, sometimes we just place blame, right? We blame the customer, we blame someone else, we blame a fellow team member or maybe a fellow department, right? So we look to place that blame as opposed to owning it and accepting responsibility. Here's something I see so often when it comes to service recovery. We make it difficult to be a customer, especially when it comes to filing a complaint, reporting an issue, sometimes even asking a question, right? Sometimes to complain or to voice a concern, it is difficult. I'll give you an example, a personal example. I had an issue with an Uber not too long ago. I'm still looking for a way to get that information to them. Boy, they hid that email address. I found some other things that were kind of AI generated, frequently asked questions where it would just give me a response. I wanted a person. It's hard to find in a lot of organizations. We want to make it as easy as possible to get that information and act on it, because again, if we don't, we potentially can lose up to 80% of those folks that had that negative experience. So we need to be very, very careful there. And here's another thing that we see very often in our consulting practice. A lot of times organizations just kind of hide behind that policy, right? We stop at that policy. Can't help you, right? Our policy says there's nothing I can do, right? Are there areas in your business where customers are getting upset and not getting treated properly because it falls under policy? Two things to look at. Is that policy actually correct? Is it worthwhile? There's a lot of policies that are out there that were kind of built as barriers to the customer experience, a lot of times to maybe try and prevent a customer from getting away with something. But what it really does at the end of the day is it impedes that customer experience for all of our customers. They're just trying to get what they paid for. So are we hiding behind policy? Similarly, are we making people read the small print? Oh, it's in there. You just didn't see it. And are your employees able to question policy, right? Do your employees have the autonomy to say, let me check with my boss. This one sounds a little unusual. This one sounds maybe a little different. And can I check and see if we can do anything? A lot of times our team members are afraid of policy. They don't want to even bring it up. They won't even take it to a supervisor, a manager, if that complaint call comes in, and they'll just hide behind policy. And that will be the end of the experience and potentially the end of your relationship with that customer. So those are all things that happen when a customer is having an issue with their experience and trying to communicate that to us. I'd ask you to take a look at this list and see if you are maybe guilty of any of these, and start to have conversations in your organization. Where can we look to minimize this from happening? Where do we need to put some training in place so this does not happen as often? And some of that training may be exactly what we're talking about today. So pay attention when we get to that never and always portion, because there may be a couple that you want to extrapolate out of our conversation today and put into your organization immediately. And that would be great. The other thing that organizations have issues with, we like to refer to as employee roulette, right? Think about this. Think about this scenario. If a phone call came into your, say, contact center right now, it's one of your best customers. and they had an issue, they're upset, they're calling in to get some resolution, maybe voice a complaint. Are you 100% confident that whoever answers that phone right now is going to do an excellent job with that great customer of yours? If your answer is yes, then that's fantastic. If your answer is, I don't know, it kind of depends on who they get, then you're experiencing employee roulette. And we define employee roulette as the level of experience that your clients or your customers receive is really dependent on the employee they happen to get. You know, the phone queue, putting them into a person's queue, and that's who you get. Or you happen to be at the desk when that great customer walks in, right? So if you have inconsistencies there, if you are suffering from employee roulette, then obviously you have an area of opportunity for training, right? To create some new content, especially focused on service recovery, and then make sure that all your team members are trained on that so you have confidence that when that great customer of yours calls in or walks in, they're going to get that issue handled properly, consistently, and done very, very well. And that's why we're focused on this today. Here's what happens in a lot of organizations. Maybe this happens in yours too. Do you sometimes have a team member that wins the argument, proves to that customer that they were wrong, but only to lose that customer? So we like to say, don't be focused on winning the argument. Don't be focused on winning that maybe one little complaint, that one little issue that may in fact cost us that customer forever. That happens in a lot of organizations, right? In some cases, there are departments that are focused on that are focused on proving that customer wrong as opposed to just finding them a solution. Does that happen in your world? Here's the good news. With tools like the service recovery nevers and always that we're going to be talking about in just a minute here, any organization can significantly improve your customer experience with your existing group of employees. It's just making sure that you have the right tools in place for them, that they're trained on those tools, and then it's a continual focus within your organization, that you're focused on conversations about those tools, using those tools, giving people shout outs when they do something effective with those tools to create that positive peer pressure across your organization. Hey, look what we achieved. Someone solved this problem. Someone had a great resolution. You can do this too. So it's really important that we're focused on making sure that our team members have those tools in place, have the autonomy to use them, aren't fearful that they're going to make a bad decision, right? They are trained and know they have the backup of their leaders to use these tools, and that can make such a drastic improvement when it comes to the experience that you are delivering. Hey, real quick, I want to share with you a video that I love. It's about a complaint and how a complaint that comes into an organization can really go two ways, right? There's an opportunity where it could be great, or maybe it could even make matters worse. Let's watch this and then we'll discuss.
So check this out. My friend Molly was getting an acai bowl. As she's eating it, she sees a blade from a blender in her acai bowl. So she notifies the owner of the store and he says this to her: "Sorry about that. I'll get you a new bowl." And she was really pissed by his reaction. Former Apple president Jean-Louis Gasset calls this the choice between two tokens: the "it's not a big deal" token and the "it's the end of the world" token. Whichever token you choose, the other person chooses the other token. So because the owner chose the "it's no big deal" token, Molly chose the other one and she was pissed off. If the owner chose the "it's the end of the world" token, it would have sounded like this: "Oh my gosh, I am so embarrassed. I cannot believe there is a blender blade in your acai bowl. I'm going to shut these blenders down. I'm going to inspect the blades. I'm going to notify the manufacturer. Here's a punch card for 4 smoothies on us. Hopefully this didn't rattle your confidence in us." If the owner said that, Molly would have chosen the other token and said, "It's not a big deal." The takeaway: whenever something goes wrong with one of your customers, you have the choice between two tokens as well: the "it's not a big deal" token or the "it's the end of the world" token. It's a choice. Choose your token wisely.
So such a great thought process there. What token is typically being selected right now in your world, right? And here's what happens, especially with our frontline employees, as they're dealing with issues over and over, hearing the same complaint over and over, they can become transactional, right? Even though they may be empathetic and handle that first time that complaint happens really, really well, if they hear it for the 5th time, the 10th time, the 15th time, they can start to become transactional and go to that no big deal token, even though they might have a week ago gone to that end of the world token. So just a great mindset for your team members to be thinking about which token are they choosing. And we have to remember that even though we may have heard this for the 10th time today, this may be the first time that happened to the customer, right? And we let them down. We did not meet their expectations. And so it is a big deal to them. So choosing that token wisely is really, really important. I want you to be thinking about that as we start to dive into this idea of service recovery, nevers, and always. So when we create a list of nevers and always, really what it is a list of behaviors or thought process that we want our team members to focus on always doing or never doing. A lot of times it's the equivalent of creating some positive habits that we want to be exuding over time and eliminating some maybe negative habits that we already have in place. So I'm going to give you some examples of what service recovery nevers and always can look like. This first list is from a great organization called Hummel that went through this process. I'll share theirs. I have some other organizational examples as well. And again, feel free to jot down some ones that you see that you think are very relevant to your organization right now. You may come out of today and want to create your list of service recovers, nevers, and always. You may come out of today with one or two that you think are really good that you just want to focus on immediately and have your teams start to be thinking about when they're interacting with your customers. So let's start with some nevers. Here are some pretty common nevers that some of our organizations focus on to make their experience better, especially when they're dealing with a complaint or a difficult conversation. Never defend or make excuses, right? This is not the time to start to try to prove the customer wrong or say that you just came in on a bad day, right? We don't want to defend ourselves at this point. We just want to own it and fix it, right? That's the goal. Own it and fix it. Get an apology in there and then fix it. Never mirror the attitude of the customer, right? And this is something that it's interesting because so many organizations have to deal with complaints, right? Every organization gets a complaint every once in a while, but so few actually have training for their team members on how to handle a complaint, not handle the process, right? Not get it and put it in the spreadsheet and send it off to the right people, but actually handle the conversation. What does that look like to deal with that person when they're upset? And a lot of times, if we don't have that training, we do mirror the customer, meaning that customer is emotional, they're upset, they're at a heightened emotional level. Maybe they're screaming, yelling. And a lot of times, if we're not prepared to deal with that, our team member comes in and meets them right at that level. We're louder, we're speaking faster, whatever that looks like. So what we want to do is we want to call mirror, but do the opposite in a situation like this, right? So when a customer's emotional and upset, we want to do the opposite of what they're doing. We want to slow down our cadence of speaking a little bit. We want to lower our volume a little bit because they will naturally start to mirror us. So it's a way of kind of saying calm down without actually saying calm down, which we know is not a good thing, right? But in the way we react, the way we respond, we can send that message of starting to lower the emotions and lower the volume. Here's another really important one. Never judge, right? Never look at a customer and make assumptions that they messed up, make assumptions they're not tech savvy, so they probably screwed this up on the app, whatever that is in your world. Don't judge, but make sure that we're listening and we're gathering all the information we need to truly help that customer. A next example from a never is don't take it personally, right? It's real easy for us as humans to see a complaint or a heated conversation as an attack on us. But we have to remember it's not. We have to remember that it's actually part of our job. These things happen. We live in a world, we work in an organization where we are going to upset customers. And part of my job as a representative of this organization is to handle that conversation and handle it well. Here's another one that I see happen all too often. Never finish the other person's sentence, right? A lot of times as service providers, when that complaint is coming in, we have a natural tendency in our heads to say, I know where this is going. This is the same call I got yesterday. And that may not be the case. And when that happens, we have a natural tendency to kind of speed up the process, to maybe finish their sentence. Say, I know what you're talking about, sir. Here's what I can do. And not letting them finish their thought. And there's two important reasons why we want to let them finish their thought. First off, they may be going in a different direction. We're assuming we know where they're going. We assume we know the story, but we may not. And secondly, we all know this, but sometimes it's hard to practice. A lot of times, half the battle is just letting that customer vent. Let them get it off their chest. And then we can start to have a rational conversation about what comes next. But if we are in a situation and we start interrupting, we're only going to heighten that level of emotion as opposed to start to diffuse it. Here are some more nevers that are really, really helpful. Never have a conversation with a customer in public or online, right? What we mean by that is take it offline, right? Don't get into an argument with someone in chat in a public forum, a public social media forum. Look to take that offline. Go to a DM, go to an email, have a phone call. In most cases, the phone call is really where you need to go. And instead of respond, how can I reach you so we can continue this conversation? Same thing with an in-person interaction. Where can you continue that conversation? Not in front of guests, because that adds to the emotional toll, right? So where can we have a calming conversation elsewhere out of the public? Here's the biggie. Don't use the word policy. Even if it is policy, don't use the word policy because policy upsets people. Policy says that you're just a number to us and you have to abide by these rules that were written in some ivory tower years ago, right? Instead, avoid the word policy and look at what we can do. As I mentioned before, the word policy for our team members usually acts as a stop sign. When I come across policy, I'm done. I have no other options. Policy says no, there's nothing I can do for you any longer. It's time to move on, right? If we avoid that word policy and we look for some sort of resolution, some sort of solution, we can still provide something for that customer. And we touched on this a little bit more already, but never interrupt. Let them finish. Let them have the stage. Let them share their concerns. But very often, as service providers, we feel like we have to make a point or add in something where maybe they were a little incorrect. That's not the case. Let them vent. Let them get it off their chest. And another service recovery never that I want to share with you, share how you can help them until you understand what their wants and needs are. Right? So never share that you can give them something until you really know what they're looking for. Right? A lot of times I hear situations like this where people say, we got you, we got you, we got you. But really what the issue is out of my control. I have to escalate it to somewhere else. Right? So make sure that we're hearing the entire situation, that we're able to handle that situation or escalate it to where it needs to go, but then be transparent with that customer. Let them know that I have to get a manager involved or a different layer of service in our organization to handle this for you. So there's a list of some great nevers to focus on. Let's talk about some always. Here are some always that we can focus on to handle these situations better. So the opposite of one that we already touched on, take that conversation private. Take it to an office, take it to a back room, take it offline to a DM, or even better, have a phone call. Lower your tone. This is that mirroring that we talked about. Instead of us coming up to their level, be patient, have them come to our level. Slow our speaking, lower our voice, and that customer will start to mirror us. I love this one. Listen like you are wrong. Listen to them like you are learning something new, because chances are pretty good you may be making an assumption that customer did something wrong, but that may not be the case. While you're having this conversation, demonstrate your full attention. And if that's online or over the phone, same thing. Don't be multitasking. Make sure that you are paying attention to every word they are saying. If you are face to face, make sure you're demonstrating you're giving them your full attention. Maybe when there is a break in the conversation, repeat back that this is what I heard you say. Am I accurate? And repeat back what they're saying. Be an active listener during this time. And in person, also listen with your eyes, right? Make sure you're paying attention. Make sure you're listening to every word that they have to say. We like to say that really a good service recovery is 90% listening and then 10% talking, and that talking is asking questions. What else happened? How can we resolve this for you? What would you like to see happen? What are some solutions in your mind? Right? So asking those questions really get to the bottom. At the end of the day, it's really being an active listener, right? That we're fully paying attention, we're fully engaged in that conversation, and we're listening to that customer. Here are some additional always: ask probing questions. Get to the bottom of it. Look at a complaint as a chance to find the root cause. How can we really learn from this as an organization and maybe prevent this from happening down the road? So ask probing questions and ask follow-up questions. Also ask clarifying questions. If you're a little confused, if you're not exactly sure what transpired, maybe it happened in a different department and you're not fully understanding of what their process is, ask for examples. Ask to really have them take you through step by step what happened, because that information can be so helpful. Always show empathy. We talk about empathy really in every workshop we do, whether it's service recovery or the customer experience cycle where we're focused on specific interactions. We always want to be empathetic, but we really have to draw on our empathy when we're having a difficult conversation. So display empathy and support, and again, be non-judgmental. And then show patience, right? Sometimes we have to really exude patience. We have to slow it down. We have to let them have the mic, so to speak, get what's on their chest off their chest. Let them feel heard. Be there for them. A lot of times that is more than half the battle of just letting them be heard in that situation. Another one is wait 2 seconds before responding, right? Don't interrupt. And a great way to make sure we're doing that, we're not interrupting, is pause. When they finish speaking, pause for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then come back with your response. It does a couple of important things. It makes sure that you're hearing everything they have to say. It makes sure that you're not interrupting, but then it also lets you process a little longer what they're saying before you give your response. A few more always that I want to share with you: make that person speaking the centerpiece. Make them the center of your attention. Make sure that you are listening, you are fully engaged. Be in learning mode. You may learn something about the organization. You may learn about a service defect that we have that we weren't aware of. Right? Again, we can't make assumptions. We have to be in learning mode and really understand what the experience is that they had gone through. And here's one that might be a little more difficult in a difficult conversation, but still be looking for Ford. We talk about Ford in all the workshops that we do. Ford stands for family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. If you're not familiar with that acronym, I know many of you on our webinar today are and are practicing Ford in your businesses. But if you're new to the DiJulius Group, you may not have heard that acronym. So family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. That is all information that is most important to us as humans. So when we're having a customer-centric conversation and we're able to observe or collect Ford information and then utilize that in the conversation, it allows us to build better rapport and build a better relationship. So even when we're in a difficult conversation, we still want to be looking for that Ford information opportunity. Where can we gather Ford and maybe use it in that conversation to even diffuse a little bit, make a connection, or maybe use it to build that relationship going forward. And then really, really important, commit to follow-up, commit to an action plan. Be transparent, set expectations. Here's what's going to happen next. And then make sure we follow through on those. Right? So I wanted to share a couple of examples. Here's an example from the salon industry. Right? And so on the side there on the left of the nevers, a lot of them that we've already shared. But again, some of these may speak to you. So I wanted to share these specific examples in case they speak to you. On the never list, we have never say no. Always focus on what you can do. Never overshare. Always just take care of it. Never blame the customer. Always own it. Never argue with the customer. Just focus on a solution. Never criticize a team member. In this case, it was housing, so a resident or a competitor, right? Just focus on that solution again. Never say it's not our policy. Never say, I don't know. We got to find out. Never show frustration. Never make a customer wrong. A few more always return a customer's voicemails or emails the same day. And when we don't know the answer, we say, let me find out. So we did some great work with the Maids International, and here was their list. Very similar, but again, some of these might speak to you and your organization and provide some specific needs to what you have going on. Never say no. Always say what you can do. Never speak negatively or gossip. Always be respectful. Never criticize. Always help everyone, team members, customers, whoever that may be. Never make excuses. Just make it right. Never hide mistakes. Always assume you are on camera. Now remember, this is the maids. They hire teams of maids that go into homes and clean those homes. Always assume you're on a nanny cam somewhere in a room, right? That's one specific to them, but a great one. Never use profanity. Always use the customer's name when possible. Never show frustration. Always make eye contact and smile. Never blame. Always say hello, thank you, and goodbye when we're finished with our services. So that is what we call the service recovery, nevers and always. That's a really quick overview of some. An exercise that you can undertake is create your own list. What would your list look like? And again, you can use some of those examples that we just shared. If you jotted them down, if they kind of spoke to you that we could use that one, by all means, please do. Service recovery is such an important piece of every business, but one that is usually not trained, not a focus enough for an organization when it comes to training. So here is your opportunity, if you're in that boat, to go out there and create your own list. Before I let you go today, I just want to make sure that you are aware, if you are interested in learning more about the DiJulius Group, we have two great opportunities coming up. One is the Employee Experience Executive Academy that will be launching. The next session launches in late January of 2025. And so there's a QR code there if you want to get more information. We also have the Customer Experience Executive Academy also launching in January of 2025 for our next session. So reach out to us, use that QR code if you want any information to learn more information about building your service recovery, nevers and always, or anything that has to do with your customer's experience. We would love to chat with you. Thank you for being here today. It was great to have the opportunity to share this tool with you. I hope it helps, and I look forward to seeing you all in the very near future.
We appreciate your reviews. Please be sure to share your comments and let us know what you're enjoying most on the podcast. And to hear more episodes, be sure to subscribe now on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening and being part of the customer service revolution.